Good morning, church family. Well, I like that. Thank you very much. Who was that responded? Was that you ladies? Yeah. Oh, back. Yeah, okay, I like it. Thank you. That's good. Make me feel like I'm at home in my own church. I like that. There's a couple of things I want to bring to your attention before we begin this morning. First of all, I realize that I have moved to the panhandle of Texas. And the way that things were done on the East Coast are a little bit different than we do it in the Panhandle. But there's a reason behind the way some of the things I do, and why I do them. And so for some of you this morning who think that your pastor should be clean shaven, I want to ask for your forgiveness. But I'm not going to change it just yet. I had to tell Mr. Frank Buzzard, I had to give him a heads up because one of the first things that Mr. Frank said to me was he liked it when I went from the big bushy beard and kind of trimmed things up a little bit. Wasn't as clean as he would have liked for it to have been, but he was gracious with me, okay? But starting last Wednesday, November the 1st, begins a process that for me the last 3 or 4 years has been a part of what I do in my life, which is what they call No Shave November. Now, I think I'm part of the guys that I used to live life with who were in the military. It kind of gave them a reason to be able to go to their commanding officers and say, I have a reason for this, right? I don't want to shave for the next month. For me, what it does is it brings awareness to something. And I'm not going to preach about it. It's not going to be a big conversation, but I just want you to know what I'm doing. So as ugly as this looks and as irritating as this will be, colon cancer and rectal cancer are much uglier. And so No Shave November is about promoting men's health. And so if you want more information, go to No Shave November, look it up on Google, it'll take you through the process. There's a place to help you understand. But I do that just as a reminder to the guys I hang out with, take care of yourselves. You think this is ugly? That's uglier, okay? So for the next couple of days, it's going to be itching. It's going to be irritating. So if I'm short with you, be patient with me as I go through this. It'll finally kind of relax a little bit. I like to think that my beard, when it grows out, looks like Mark Wagner's. In fact, people think we kind of look alike, but dude, you don't have the white that I have, and it just wants to go crazy. So thank you for your graciousness for the next 30 days. We just got a few more weeks to go through this. I guess not even 30 days. The other thing I want to bring to your attention is when you walked in this morning, you received a normal worship bulletin, and with that, you also should have received a letter. This letter is just simply an information piece. I'm inviting you to walk with us in the next coming months, next coming weeks, through some different things in our church. Starting next week, as you'll see in the letter, there's going to be some information put into the bulletin. It's going to be a weekly thing, and I want to draw your attention to that. There's going to be a town hall style meeting in December. We're going to invite people who want to come and talk about the financial state of our church, where we are as far as a church with a little bit of vision and values, but to address some serious things that our elders brought to our attention back in the summertime. We want to continue that. I made a promise in the Welcome Home series that if you as a church would spend time and pray, fast about your giving, that in that I would respond and be good stewards of what you give. And this is part of me keeping my promise to communicate where we are financially. Now, some of these things are short-term pieces. I'm not going to write a letter every week and give it to you. Sorry, it may disappoint some of you, but this is not going to happen. But there will be a weekly communication. We're going to have regular town hall meetings. And then on Thursday this week, there's going to be a video posted that talks more details about the information piece in the bulletin and invites you specifically to that town hall meeting. The time and the location will be communicated more specifically as we get there. What I hope to do is to hear from you, to be able to have a conversation. I don't want to just push more information at you. I think you have enough of that coming your way. But I want you to understand what's out there, and I want us to have a dialogue. And some of that's going to be hard conversations, asking specific questions that I may not have answers to yet, but working with the elders, we'll figure out those answers. Working with staff, we'll be able to answer some of those things. Some of the things we'll share will be revelation to you. You will not have known what's going on because it hasn't been talked to you. It hasn't been told to you, hasn't been shown to you, and so we understand that. So I think the most powerful thing we will do over the next month, 2 months, will be that town hall meeting. Because for me, I'm not a big letter writer, but I love conversations. Even hard conversations are good to have. And so I would love for you to mark in your calendar December the 10th, and just be willing to come after church, probably about a 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock time frame, and just spend some time with me and the elders and maybe some staff members as we talk about the life of our church, which is a great topic. So You have those things. If you didn't get your letter coming in, make sure you grab one on the way out, take a read. If you have questions in between now and the December time frame, just let me know. Email me, call the church office, and we'll have a conversation. Okay, administrative things out of the way. I want to share with you a story as we get into this morning, and it doesn't involve me, which is kind of strange because most of my opening stories are egocentric, right? About how I love bread or macaroni and cheese or how I learned to talk with sheep or whatever. But this morning is a story about a sea captain. His name is Christopher Sheldon. And I doubt that any of you have ever heard that name before. He's not famous for really much of anything, but something happened to him. In 1968, he purchased a brigantine ship. Now, I don't know all the details of ship making, and I know in this agrarian society, ships aren't really, boats aren't a big thing that we know a whole lot about. But some of you may have owned boats or may have sailed at some point in time. So this particular ship, he purchased for the purpose of taking students on a voyage for a year and teaching them not only how to captain a ship, how to sail, but also things of an academic nature. So science, English, math, they learned about language. His wife was a doctor, had a PhD from, I think, Cornell University. He had a degree from a university in Spain in language. He brought on a guy to teach math and English. He had a cook who also did some things, the teaching, and then they learned how to take care of the ship. So some of it was teach them how to navigate and how to sail and how to steer and how to plan and how to plot your course and things to watch out for. And so they sailed from America to the Galapagos Islands, and then on the return voyage, there was an issue. An issue came in the form of a microburst. So now I've gone from navigation and nautical expertise now to weather expertise, which is kind of an oxymoronic phrase, right? Nobody really is an expert and knows how to predict it precisely. But a microburst, to my knowledge, is when warm air leaves the surface of the earth, goes into the upper atmosphere, is supercooled very quickly, and warm air goes up, cool air comes down, and as it supercools, it drops very quickly. And when it does that, it creates a microburst of air that can travel up to 150 miles an hour. Now, this is the same kind of microburst that if you're ever in a plane, you felt the shaking, right? That's the warm air rises, cool air descends. Well, a microburst is what caused Flight 191 to crash in Dallas, the Delta flight. Right on the edge of the runway, there was a microburst that hit. Well, at sea, when a microburst happens, what it does is it hits the water and causes a rogue wave called a white squall. And so this air and this water in the midst of a storm, as Captain Sheldon was navigating in a direction heading back to the United States, this rogue wave came from a different direction, and the wind pushed his sails towards the water, and then the wave hit him and caused the boat to turn, capsized. This particular boat, unlike many sailing vessels that are sailboats, did not have the ability to immediately right itself like some do and can cast out the water. When it turned over, there was one port that was left open during the storm. Water rushed in. 6 members of the crew were trapped out of 18. And according to Captain Sheldon and the other people who were involved in the rescue mission and the debriefing afterwards, almost instantly the ship began to sink. Unusual for a sailing ship, an open water vessel. And as it sank, it then righted itself, but just kept sinking. And he describes it in his book and in the subsequent movie called White Squall, where he's looking under the water and he can see the ship has righted back up, the masts are in the right place, and he can see his wife captured in the boat, descending into the depths. He never captained another ship after that. He worked for the Peace Corps. In fact, he left sailing altogether, worked for the Peace Corps, had another person in his life, another woman who became a lifelong partner. They never had children. And so you would look at this situation and say that he never recovered from this. And I wonder, as I listen to the story, how many times I've felt that. Right? Where the thing that I thought was most secure, the thing that I put my trust in, capsizes, and now I don't have anything to hold on to. There were 2 lifeboats that were released. One of the young men who was caught in the rigging, as he released the lifeboats, and he thought he was going to survive, and as he released the last one, he looked up and he realized he was caught in the rigging, and he was dragged down with the boat. The 2 boats, one that he released, came up, they turned them over, and the rest of the people, I think it was 12 people who survived this incident, crawled in. But here's the problem now. Open ocean, active storm, You have no power supplied to move these lifeboats in a direction, and now you're going aimlessly. Now, I've never been in a sinking ship. If I'm were to confess this morning, there's a few things that I have fear of, and for whatever reason, being caught in a ship that is sinking is probably one of those unexplainable fears. I don't get in a boat often enough for that even to be a risk for me. I've been on one cruise in my entire life. I've been on contained waters, like within an ocean bay, maybe 10 times. But to be in a ship in the ocean that's open, that's just not really the lifestyle that I lead. But there's this unexplainable fear of being captured in that moment and being taken down. But I sure have felt like I've been in that boat, and the storm is raging around me, and I don't have a way to control it. I don't have a way to get someplace. I can't even plot the course. Along the journey, he had been stopped by the Cuban Navy, and to try to hamper him and to cause problems, before they reached the Galapagos Islands, one of the guys who were on the Cuban Navy ship came over and broke his compass, trying to cause this trip to be sabotaged. What they didn't know is that Sheldon had studied how to navigate by the stars. He had found a way to have a fixed point to be able to continue on. But in a boat that has no power supply, no power source or way to cause it to move, a fixed position doesn't mean much. And so for 2 days, they drifted until they were picked up and rescued and brought back to the United States and began to live life now in this new season. But have you been there? That the thing you thought was consistent, the thing you thought was solid, the thing you thought was an anchor for you came loose. Something happened to take your confidence and push it underwater. What do you do? What do you do when you realize that the thing you put your faith in isn't faithful? For me, there's been a couple of times in my life that I realized that even without really understanding why or the what, that I had put my faith in things that were not solid. Imagine being on Paladero Lake in the middle of a storm, and instead of going towards land, you find another boat, and the two of you anchor to each other. How productive is that? Two boats in rough seas, rough wind, rough lake, banging against each other. You're not going to survive very long. And that's the tendency I have, is that I want to put my faith in people, but they're a ship afloat without direction, sometimes just like me. And I wonder, what do I do now? How do I handle this moment when I've realized the thing I've anchored myself to isn't anchorable, if that's even a term. If you're an English teacher, dismiss that. But how do I do that? What do I do now that I've realized this is a moment of chaos? And that's where we find the disciples. If you have your scriptures open to John chapter 14, we're going to look specifically at verses 1 through 7, when Jesus makes a bold claim about who he is. I want to set this up as you're looking. See, Jesus is coming into the city. From John chapter 1 to John chapter 12, it looks at 3 years, about 3 years of ministry time. From John chapter 12 to the end of John, I think it's chapter 21, we look at a 2-week period of life. Almost the same amount of information space is used for 3 years as he gives to 2 weeks. And it begins with Jesus coming into the city in the triumphal entry, right? In fulfillment of prophecy, people come out, they're singing phrase, Hosanna, Hosanna, glory to God the highest. They're laying down palm branches for the king to come in. They put a robe on him. They capture a donkey. They put him on this donkey, and they march him into the city with great praise. And that same crowd that's cheering him 2 weeks later will call for his death and execution. And in between this moment and that moment, we have about a week and a half worth of walking. And so Jesus is heading into the Passover season. And he begins to have a conversation with his men. All 12 are sitting there, including Judas. And so in John chapter 11 and 12 and 13, he begins to kneel down. He takes his robe, he puts it around his waist, he takes the towel and begins to wash the feet. And Peter says, you can't do that. I'm not worthy of that washing. And he says, well, if I don't wash your feet, you can't sit here. And then Peter says, well, then wash all of me. And Jesus says, that's not necessary. You're already clean. Just let me wash your feet, brother. And so he washes the feet of his disciples, gives them a command, do this to others. He begins to prepare for the final meal, and he tells them there's bad things coming. I'm about to die. I'm about to be crucified. I'm going to be betrayed. I'm going to be turned into the hands of the enemy, and I'm going to be killed. And they're just horrified. They're about to eat this great meal, and he's talking about he's going to die. And it says, too, the disciples have a conversation. The one who is the beloved, who loves, is sitting next to Jesus, kind of leaning up against him. And one of the other disciples says, ask him who it is. Like little kids, ask him. Ask him. And so he leans over and says, Jesus, who is this going to betray you? And what does he say? The bread that gives life, I'm going to dip it into this bitterness, and the person I give it to will betray me. And he turns to Judas and he hands him the morsel of bread. Judas runs. He's just washed the feet of Judas, the man who will betray him. And then he says to the disciples, Peter, you're going to deny me. Peter's like, no way. I will fight to the death. Great, that's a great sentiment, but you're going to deny me 3 times. And you'll know because the rooster will crow 3 times on your third denial. The rest of you guys, you're going to scatter to the wind. This moment will be more than you can handle, and you're about to be gone. You're not going to make this journey very well with me. But something good's about to happen. And that's where we pick up the storyline, because after confessing all of these difficult things to them, now he comes and he says, but, starting in verse 1, let not your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and will take you to myself, and where I am, you may be also. And you know the way to where I'm going. But then verse 5, Thomas says to him, Lord, we do not know where you are going. How can we know the way? And then Jesus says in verse 6, I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you had known me, you would have known my Father also. From now on, you do know him and have seen him. Now, I want to take us back through a few things because I think it's important for us to understand all the things we can with what he's saying in this passage. Now, I'm going to tell you this. I can't break apart every part of it this morning. I'm going to break apart things that are big because I want you to understand when he says this phrase, he does something very simple but very significant. This may be one of the simplest messages I've ever preached. I got one point for you this morning. I'm going to try to explain a little bit, but it's a one simple point. But sometimes with simplicity, you got profoundness, right? And it's not my intellect, it's not my depth of knowledge, it's what Jesus chose to do. So pray with me as God reveals this to us this morning that we would understand it. Father, this next moment as we try to unpack what Christ said in that moment, help us to understand the heaviness. Help us to understand the moment that he reveals these things to the disciples, what they must have been thinking and feeling and sensing. Help us to see that in the questions and the dialogue and the conversation. But Father, also help us to see the hope that was given in that moment. And I pray that as we understand it the best that we can, as the Spirit speaks to us, we walk out of here changed people. And so, Father, right now I ask that the Spirit is moving, and in that movement to open our hearts and our minds to truly and fully hear what you have to say to us. And may our hearts be ready to respond. We pray this in Christ's name. Amen. I'm going to jump back really quick. I want to break down some parts of this passage. Okay, I'm going to head back to the very beginning. Let me go back to verse 3. As Jesus is having this conversation with the disciples, he reveals some very profound things to them. In verse 3 he says, and if I go, prepare a place for you, I will come again and will take you to myself, and where I am, you may also be. They had spent 3 years intimately together, sharing meals, sleeping in the same place, wrestling with hardships, hearing incredible teaching, seeing the response. I mean, there's the 5,000 people who are fed on fish and loaves from a little boy. There's 4,000 people who are fed. There are thousands of people who get saved. There's the woman who's healed. She touches the hem. There's the moment where Jesus reaches. We said a couple weeks ago, he touches the man who's laying at the water ready to be healed. And Jesus just says, get up, go, you're healed. And immediately the man is strengthened. For 3 years, they've been walking with this man and living life. And he says, what we shared together, we are about to be apart. And then, in the apartness, sorry, English grammar people, just be patient with me. In the apartness, we're going to come back together in a moment. And so the disciples are here thinking, you're about to leave. The game is about to change. It's over. Now, why do I think that the disciples are thinking in a fleshly state that, yeah, he's going someplace, but he's going to be away from us? They don't fully understand spiritually what he means by that. And it's because Thomas asks the question. He says, Lord, what do we know where you are going, and how can we know the way? That response to them says one of two things. Either he's about to abandon them and go to some other place. By the way, I don't think he comes to North America. That's just my own opinion there. But he's going to leave them. He's going to walk away, and he's going to push them. Now, here's the thing. Remember the man who was healed at the tombs? The crazy man who was demon-possessed. He's naked, running around outside of his mind, possessed by demons. Jesus heals him. They put clothes on him. He begins to reason like a man. He eats and drinks. He goes to get into the boat and be with Jesus. And what does Jesus do? Heisman moment. He stiff-arms and says, this isn't your place. Go to your hometown and tell them what I did for you. And so I think the disciples think there's that moment that Jesus is now giving them the stiff arm and he's going to go someplace else. Or that he is about to die. He physically is about to have his life taken from him, and maybe he really isn't fully the Messiah. And in his death, we're going to be left to hold the bag. We're going to be the ones who have to be held accountable. If he's not here physically, then the Romans are going to come after us, the Jewish council is going to come after us, and we're at risk. I'm with you now. I'm about to be gone, but I'm going to come back and get you. And I think they missed that part about the comeback, okay? And they're listening to the abandonment. They're afraid. I want to clarify something. When Jesus says, I'm going to go and prepare a place for you, let me take something away from you, if I can. Jesus was trained, we think, to be a carpenter. His father worked with wood. I don't think that Jesus is up in heaven building a house for you. I just want to make sure we're clear on that. Heaven is not a developing place. If there's somebody here, I'm making a lot of apologies this morning, but I want to make sure I emphasize this. If you're part of the development council, I haven't met any of you yet, but if you are, just give me some grace. It's not like the land out here. Is it Utah, right next to Texas? There's a couple of plots there ready to go for anybody to build on, right? Heaven isn't looking like that. There's not these empty lots in heaven waiting for you to show up. That's not how it is. Heaven is fully developed. When John saw it and John looked in the vision of Revelations, it wasn't a growing city. It was a city that was established. So how is it that Jesus says, I'm going to prepare a place for you? My best interpretation is, from this conversation to the moment he ascends, is the preparation he's talking about. I have to be prepared so that you can live in that place. And that preparation is rejection, arrest, dishonor, grossness, uncleanliness, rejection of the Father, turning and have that first moment he's not in the presence of his Father. And the earth shakes, all the sin in the world is put upon him, and then he dies. He lays in a dead place. It's dark. He then is brought back to life. He then comes out of there. He starts to have conversations with his disciples, and then he ascends. That's the preparation he's talking about. He's not up there with little Keebler-Eller's hammer building you a little house. And it's definitely not based upon how good you are here. It's about the size of house you have. Some of you would have the shack out back and be thinking, praise Jesus, I'm in heaven. That's not in line with Scripture. But he's going to prepare a place. He will walk through the hardest times that we will have seen in order that we would live in relationship. Do you hear the theme? I'm with you. I'm going to leave you, but I'm coming back for you. In the preparation, the things I'm doing is so that you can have a connection. Everything he points to here is about abiding with the Father. If some of your scriptures say mansions in heaven, I want you to think of that more in terms of there's a big apartment complex that God has, and he's got lots of rooms. Okay, and that's the way that he chooses to describe it here. I can't tell you why he chooses that other than the really understanding the term in the original Greek language was there is a place of abiding. There's a place to be with. And when the time comes and I come back and get you, you will be with the Father. So he's taken their physical concerns and said it's bigger than that. There's a spiritual thing happening, and I've just revealed that you've got some fleshly issues still going on. You don't quite get it. And how many times have we professed faith, and then the storm hits, our sails get pushed in the water, the ship begins to sink, I get into some kind of lifeboat raft, somebody comes in and helps out, I don't have a clear direction, I can't power myself to freedom and safety, and I begin to turn to my own ways to save myself. When he says this to them, when he reminds them, when Thomas says, we don't know the way, and what's his response? Me. Not only am I the way, I am also the truth, and let me give you a third one, I'm also the life. A great Southern Baptist preacher, Jesus was. 3 key points to the message, and then get out of there. And when he makes this confession to them, he says, you don't understand that it is me. And I think he's afraid, and what we see is the moment that chaos hits, they turn to their own resolution. What do the disciples do? Peter goes back to fishing. And he isn't catching much, but man, I'm going to go back to the boat. That's where I know. And they turn back to the old things of life to help them figure out the chaos. I've been there. I've done that. The moment that I was questioned, the moment I was challenged, the moment I was hurt, I go back to the old things to help me somehow get a grasp on this and take control. But that's the false anchor. When Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, no one comes to the Father except through me, this is what he is saying. No matter the question, no matter the situation, no matter the context, no matter your feelings, no matter what anybody else says, I am the answer. I can't get any more simple than that. And you say, well, yeah, he may be the answer for you, but I've come into situations that Jesus really doesn't know how to answer that. Then you're not really understanding what's going on. You're back in Thomas's shoes. And I've been there. I've been there where I thought, is he really the answer, or will education overcome? Is he really the answer, or is it finances that overcome? Is he really the answer, or is it more job opportunities? Is it more children? Is it a better marriage? The 12 steps to living life with your spouse in a way that makes you feel good about yourself. You go back to something that you can control. And what you've done is you've tied yourself up to another boat that has no anchor, and destruction is coming. I want you to picture it this way. Jesus is with his disciples. He's washed their feet. They've had a meal. Judas is gone. He talks about the betrayal, moments of chaos, upheaval. The person they love is about to be gone. And then he says to them, I'm going to be gone, but I'm going to come back for you. Well, what's the way? And in the moment that Thomas asked that question, it says Jesus takes the biggest fence post in the world and uses his pinky finger and drives it into the ground to the most stable bedrock that has ever been found on the planet Earth and says, me. That is who I am. Anchor yourself to this. This is better than 3-foot footings. This is better than a prepared pole that tells you how much concrete to put in. This is better than the caissons that were built to hold the Golden Gate Bridge. This is better than the amount of space that was used to create one World Place, right? The new building that was there from the World Trade Center. They went deep. And this thing is way more secure than that. And when the chaos hits, don't wait till then to hold on to this post. Grab onto it now, because I'm telling you, the storm is coming. And it's not just a simple storm. It's not a singular storm. It's not a storm that you think is the greatest storm of all time, but it's a storm that has been raging from the day that you bit the apple. Don't turn to your old self. Don't think there's another answer. Every time he uses thee, it's pointing back to a singular person in himself. Do you truly believe that Jesus is the answer? Not just for you, but for the world today. I mean, really, is there above him no other? Jesus is the way. In this statement, I believe that Jesus does three things really well. When he says that I am the way, he's encapsulating a previous image. When he says that I am the door, I'm the gate, right? The way goes through the door. I control that. That's my task. That's what I've been given to do, is to control that way. The way includes a passage. The way also includes a light fixture. Light does two really good things. One, if you're in a dark room, the light turns on, it draws your attention, right? We talked about that. So it's a drawing factor. But number two, light also casts something that in the direction you want to go. If you've ever owned a kerosene lantern that you've pumped up, you got the little globes put on it, you light it, it lights perfectly. If you hold it up like this in the woods, what happens? You are blinded by it. You can't see where to go, so you put a shield on it so it kind of casts a light in a direction, a lamp unto your feet, a light to the path that shows you the direction to go. And when he says, I am the way, I'm the one that you will go through, and I'm showing you where to go. When he says, I'm the truth, he encapsulates this idea. Again, I am the good shepherd. What I tell you is honest. What I tell you is accurate. What I tell you is truthful. Who I am is a revelation of the truth. The Logos, the Word of God, come into the world. One of the most powerful things he says, I don't want to say the most powerful, but one of the things he says in verse 7, if you had known me, you would have known my Father also. And then he says this, no matter what your situation was, from now on, you do know him and have seen him. You've eaten dinner with God. You've broken bread with God. You have prayed with God. You have struggled with God. You have walked with God. You've been stinky with God. You've had dirty feet with God. You have seen him on a daily basis. When you see me, you see him. The truth is revealed in flesh. And I have an accurate idea of who God is because of that. I am the door. I am the light. I am the good shepherd. But when Jesus says, I am the life, I'm the bread of life. And he goes back to, I'm the resurrection and the life. This one phrase takes everything he has said in revelation of himself and draws it into one moment. It's not about the fact that I can solve this problem, unless my solution is to turn back to Jesus. It's not the fact that I can endure this on my own, I can give a stiff upper lip, I can pull my bootstraps up, unless I'm empowered by Jesus. And how many of you have a testimony about how Jesus was the way, the truth, and the life, and that you realize that you can't make it to the Father without him? What was your response to that? How old were you? 6, 9, 65? What was it? Where were you when you believed this confession about who Jesus is? Were you in a church? Sunday morning? How about a Sunday evening? How about a Sunday midday conversation? Was it a Wednesday night? Was it kids choir? Was it VBS? Was it a ladies' retreat? Yesterday there were 254 ladies in this room praising God, hearing from a woman who said to you, don't respond to fear. That's a false anchor. The moment you hitch yourself to that thing, it's going to upheaval and you're going to be in chaos again. Fear is not the right answer. These women were praising Jesus because of that. Sitting at tables, eating a lot of chicken salad sandwiches, and a little bit of ramen noodle cabbage, coleslaw. But they were having these beautiful conversations at these tables. And they were all coming to the same conclusion that Jesus is the answer. So you're going to walk away from here today, and I wonder, will you walk away asking the question, is he really the answer? He's revealed himself as being the way. He's revealed himself as being the truth of God revealed to mankind. He's revealed himself as being life with God. See, it's not just that we have life in him, not that we become better people and we pay our taxes and we don't speed as often or we don't get caught as often speeding. I got to pray over the first responders this week, and I wanted to make sure they understood how thankful we were that they have trained us how to go to these places where the driveways have been closed off, and they guide us gently around to the legal ways to get there. It usually involves some kind of piece of paper that tells you how you did it wrong. Some of you have had that problem, okay? And so this thing, right, that we don't become just better people, I don't become a better driver, and I'm not a nicer person, I don't dress differently, my hair doesn't get cut, I don't finally shave when I know Jesus, but it's life with the Father. What I was created to do. That term peace means relationship with God. That's the only place we find true peace. And if I'm in a marriage that doesn't understand that, you know that there's lack of peace. When I got kids who don't understand the meaning of peace, it's a chaotic household. Pushing, testing, discipline, correction, hugs from time to time. But I wonder, do you agree that Jesus is the answer? Will you leave here today living like this is the answer? Some of us, I think we study for the final test. And it doesn't really impact our learning and our lifestyle, but will you walk out of here living because Jesus is the answer? It's a very simple response. Some of you have had the experience of anchors that didn't hold. Fixins, right? I fix myself to this. Fixins that failed. Truth that was told to me to be the honest truth, which turned out to be an absolute lie. And those other lifestyles, the other lifer kind of things, this is the way to live, the hacks, right? I mean, if you're connected to Facebook and YouTube, you've probably seen 10 million life hacks. And other ways to live life better end up leaving us bankrupt. And if you're there, praise Jesus, because now you realize that there isn't a good answer. And if you've come to terms with this, praise Jesus, because now you can share that answer with other people. The old ways will always change. If my life is anchored to a tradition, the tradition will change and I'm in upheaval. If my life and my faith are anchored to a color of a hymnal, the hymnal color will change and I am in chaos. If my life is anchored to a particular person, man, they're not anchored either. They're not solid. Sorry. My life is back in chaos. Walk out of here today. Attach yourself to the one true mooring that will never fail, the one true fence post that never moves. There's somebody in this congregation who told me a story. And if you own the story, then you can get credit later on. But we were talking about, they're teaching me about how you used to do the reaping of the harvest, right? And planting crops. And before the days of GPS where you simply hit go and the thing drove itself, you had to actually pay attention and do it. And in the conversation, he said, you know what I did one time? Hope I don't portray this wrong. I fixed my sights on the fence post at the end of the row. And I headed out for the fence post. I'm pretty good. I felt kind of proud that I could row a straight line. And he said, all of a sudden, the earth began to move. It was as if the earth folded in on itself. And I began to have this moment. I'll probably dramatize this a little bit, but I was concerned because the fence post, which was supposed to be stable, began to move on me. And I began to follow the fence post. And he said, as I got closer, what I realized was the fence post had turned into a cow. If I'm not looking to Jesus for the answer, man, those fence posts are going to be floating all over the place, and I'm going to be changing constantly, and it's chaotic, and it's never secure, and I'm not going to have a whole lot of good crops. Jesus is the answer. Fix your eyes upon him. Set your path upon who he is. Set the values of how you live your life on his words, and reap the benefits that he brings for living. Let's pray. Father, thank you for revelation. And this is such a heavy moment. where I am sure that the disciples felt like they were about to be abandoned. And there was concern was, is this really true? Can he really be taken to a place that we can't go? Are we stuck here forever? And in that you revealed a very deep and profound but very simple thing. That Jesus was the one true way. That Jesus was the truth that was spoken. And that Jesus was the life revealed. And so, Father, I pray that we would understand that we would hitch up to that post, that we would follow that fixed point, that we would anchor in something that's going to hold. And Father, as we live our lives, every morning we get up, we desire, we strive, we know that there is danger if we don't hook up to that solid place. That when moments around us kind of begin for us to question, is this life? Is this the new norm? Is this chaos going to be like this forever? And then we turn back and we find peace because of who Jesus is. We're going to be in our community. And Father, this week, our community still is reeling from the effects of something we thought was solid that turned out to be shifting and changing. An economy that isn't consistent. And in that, I pray that the revelation of that inconsistency pushes us back to the cross. And so, Father, thank you for Jesus, and that he is the true answer for what we need. We thank you in his name. This morning, I'm going to ask our prayer team to come forward. There may be somebody here this morning. I can't walk away if you realize, the Spirit revealed to you that you've been attaching yourself to anchors that keep failing and keep changing, and truth that keeps being a lie, and life that doesn't really fulfill, that takes away from you. And this morning, you realize you've never put your faith and trust in Jesus Christ. Then make a response this morning. Don't wait anymore. Come to the front and pray. If it's not the front you want to be at because this has got some kind of weird aura about it, then grab the person next to you. Say, hey, are you a Christian? Walk with me through this. What am I supposed to do? And if that person can't answer your question, then raise your hand. I'll come run to you. I'll figure this out with you. Put your faith and trust in Jesus Christ. If you're here this morning and some of the chaos is ensuing around you and you're feeling some of the pains of that chaos, then come down. These people would love to pray with you, pray over you, and ask God to bring some healing. Maybe you just kind of gather together, and maybe a couple of ladies just pray for each other, and a couple of families gather and they pray over each other. Maybe some students want to face each other and pray and ask God, help us through this time of chaos. Maybe it's time that husbands and wives look at each other and say, you know what, I love you, but you are not the final answer. Don't take that personal. Praise Jesus, right? Because two people who anchor in Jesus are going to be happy together. And so maybe as husbands and wives, you look at each other and pray over each other. And so if it isn't coming to the front, I beg that you would pray where you are. As you finish that prayer time over each other, then there will be prayer requests on the screen. People who have called in, who have submitted names for people who need healing and comfort, and they've gone through loss. Pray over them also. But this next moment, as God has called you and spoken to you, I pray that you would respond in prayer, in conversation with him. Let's stand together and let's respond. As we spend time in prayer, I want you just to look around you. If you see a green chair, that's an opportunity. somebody who's not here this morning, somebody who you haven't heard from in a while, maybe somebody who you've been brought attention to, somebody who in your neighborhood who needs to be in this chair. So I would pray that you would pray over that chair and pray over that person. They would come and find a wonderful marriage with that chair, a place to come and call home and fellowship and people. Pray over that right now. Father, thank you for a time this morning that we can come together. Thank you for a place that we can gather in. And Father, over the decades of this church, you've brought us to this moment as a people. And I pray that as we leave from this place, we don't think about coming back here for ourselves, but Father, we are stirred to the people around us who don't have a place to call home, who don't understand what it means to live in sweet fellowship, who maybe have never heard the fact that Jesus, that your Son is the way, the truth, and the life. And sometimes that's a heavy statement, Father, to say that there is one way, but for those of us who have found it, praise you, that one way was made relevant, that there aren't 1,000 different ways. And Father, we may have it, we may lose it, it may be shifty, we may not be secure, but Father, there was one true way, and that's through Jesus Christ. I pray that we would have a chance to have that conversation this week. And when somebody talks about the banking industry as the solution for our country and our families, that we can speak a different truth. When somebody talks about the energy industry as being the answer to our problems, that we have a different answer. And that whatever answer is put out there that can solve problems, that if it misses the mark of talking about Jesus Christ, then Father, give us the opportunity. Make us aware of that moment. And in that, with grace and mercy and patience, may we simply reveal the ultimate truth, that your Son is the answer. Now, how we as Christians walk into the energy sector and live out our faith. As we as small business owners walk into this community, and how we treat our employees and how we work within this community. Mothers and fathers walking into their homes who are believers, how are they parenting? How are they providing? How are they pouring into each other and encouraging? Father, teachers who walk in carrying the skills and tools to teach our children to have skills that they can provide for themselves, that they would also pass along their faith. That their words and their character would ring out in a classroom where there is at home chaos. I pray for our administrators as they provide this environment with which faith can be shared. Father, for our first responders, they kind of have this life-saving task and protection as a calling on them. That, Father, those Christians who carry that badge and who respond to fires and ambulance runs, Father, for game wardens, for the entire area of first responders, that you would let them hear from you. But I pray that those Christians who have that job, they would walk in understanding a call to be like you. And I pray that we have conversations about children who are missing, and children who are sick, families who are going through upheaval from loss, people who are insecure about what the future holds, concerns, and their relationships are struggling, that we do more than just simply spout off an easy answer, but we begin to walk life with them to show what the answer looks like. And so, Father, thank you for this morning that all of those things happen because of this place and because of this fellowship, that we were given this information, this knowledge, this experience to carry out into the world. Beautiful feet carrying hope. We pray this because of Jesus Christ. Amen.